Welcome everybody to the first episode of Two Guys Who Disagree About Stuff. We're your hosts, Michael the Conservative.
Trevor the Progressive.
Yeah, we're two friends that have known each other for a long time now. It's been about 12 years. We went to high school together, we played football together, and we discovered we were thespians at about the same time. On this show, we'll mostly be disagreeing. However, for this inaugural episode, ironically, we'll probably agree more so than not.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you have been on the internet, but or have ever tried to have a political discussion on the internet. But if you did, I'm sure you know that it went incredibly well and everybody was respectful. Yeah, I think me and Michael both noticed this. It was something that we both were bothered by. It's just increasing, I don't know, impossibility of having an actual conversation online. Everyone's just kind of screaming at each other as if they were, flipping off a pedestrian from their car or something. No real compromise, no real thought. So Michael put up this PSA looking for, somebody on the left that felt the same way. Like maybe we need to change the discourse, make things, I don't know, possible to have some kind of dialogue.
Yeah, and, we may not change the world, but we'd like to do our little part at least in helping dialogue between people who fundamentally disagree when it comes to values, when it comes to policy, anything. I mean, Trevor and I, for example, we've been talking about this podcast and putting something together for over 3 months. And I think over the course of those entire 3 months, when we finally said, all right, what are we going to call this thing? We couldn't even agree on a name. So we are diametrically opposed in most polarized political issues that are being discussed today. However, we feel that because we're friends and because of the way that we want to see things change, we can help make things a little bit more respectful. We want to understand each other, and the format of our conversation is going to be more about understanding than persuasion. And then sometimes we'll find or attempt to find solutions that appease both sides.
Yeah, I think my hope for this, and I think also Michael's hope for this is, not necessarily that we change our views or that we come to some kind of point in the center. It's not to say that being in the middle of two extremes is the best or something like that, but just that we have a better understanding, because I think the way things are going right now, it's getting increasingly hostile, increasingly violent, and for me personally, I'm concerned that the foundation of our democracy is kind of breaking down, because in order to have a democratic, representative government, you got to have people that are willing to engage in discussion and willing to, let that be how it goes. We're not going to fight each other. We're going to talk about it and, let the ideas speak for themselves. And I think that one thing is, I think that we're trying to talk about these things in a respectful way, trying to understand each other's point of view. It's not because they're trivial. It's not because politics don't matter. It's not because the viewpoints aren't very different and, have different consequences, but it's because they're so important that we have to be able to talk about them, because we can't talk about them, then I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and also we can't leave it to leaders and politicians to have these kinds of conversations. All of us need to be able to do our part. And it doesn't matter if you are an expert on a topic or if you are a complete novice like Trevor and I will be on multiple conversation points, multiple topics we won't have much background, but all of us need to be able to talk together and at least respect one another. So our hope for takeaways for these conversations moving forward is that they can lead to less tribalism, a de-escalation of the rhetoric that we're seeing, and hopefully we can all come together in unity.
We will sing Kumbaya, yes.
Yeah, I guess one thing that you were saying that really resonated with me just now was that we are seeing that breakdown in society. You know, we've
Yeah.
been talking about it, or I feel people have been talking about it for a while now, that, oh, things are getting bad, we're more divided than ever. But we've actually started to see evidence that that might be true. We see the Capitol riots a few weeks ago. We see people trying to deplatform one another who disagree politically. We're seeing a lot of nasty, underhanded stuff boil to the surface a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that I've been thinking about this. I think in order to have a democracy, you basically have to be willing to accept, what a majority of people in your country will think. You have to be willing to consider yourselves one nation with these other people. And I think that when the divide gets so stark, it becomes hard to, I don't know, it'd be difficult to put, Texas and Iran together and try to have them, have an election or something. They have extremely different viewpoints. And maybe they wouldn't consider the other people's viewpoints legitimate enough to be like, okay, yeah, I'll accept that. You guys voted for this, I'll accept that. And I think that maybe we're not quite at that point yet, but I think we might be approaching the point where we just can't function as one country. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess we've been talking about this a little bit, but when when do you feel you first started to notice this was happening?
I think I started to notice how things were sort of breaking down maybe in 2015. I started to get really engaged in political discussions online, trying to win arguments with strangers for some reason. But I think I really started to see just how impossible that was. Even with people that were on the same vague side of the political spectrum as I was. I think I didn't spend much time arguing with people that were just totally, diametrically opposed, mostly just, factional fighting or whatever. But I just think that people online, especially Facebook is the one that comes to mind, but it's so public and I think, so permanent. And I think people are just not willing to back down. I think that because it's on there, because everyone can see it, they're just not going to, lose face. And so they just keep going and they get kind of goaded on, with a bunch of thumbs up from people that are on their side. I don't know. And I think it's also possible with the distance afforded by online communication to sort of just dehumanize the other person and just not think of them as a real person.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true.
And what do you think? How about for you? When do you think it started to break down?
I think for me, it wasn't about when I started to, or when I think it started to happen, but when I gained an awareness that it was happening,
Yeah.
was when I realized that my emotions were being played with for the sake of clips and web traffic. Clicks and web traffic. I said clips for some reason. That was weird. But these news corporations are being incentivized more than ever to create these sensationalist headlines and to take a side on these issues. And they are trying to capitalize on rage because rage is what influences behavior more than any emotion. So
Interesting.
either that or validation, right? So what you were talking about, how you're getting these thumbs up from complete strangers. So people want to either feel completely validated or they want to see an enemy against them looking really dumb. And and so I realized, oh my word, these big corporations are doing these clickbaity headlines and writing these super scathing articles about people in the political game and taking moral positions on these issues that are so strong and dehumanizing the other side. I was like, oh my gosh, even just reading this is making me feel more extreme. And selfishly, that's actually part of the reason why I wanted to have these kinds of conversations with you, is I need therapy, man.
America needs therapy.
Yeah, I read things pertaining to politics and I just get so angry.
Yeah.
And I start to dislike people and have ill feelings and resentment towards other people. And that's just, it makes me feel so nasty. I just want
Yeah.
to purge it from my system. I want to love everybody again. Make America love again, man.
Make America. Yeah, I think that a lot of people, wherever they are on the political spectrum, can relate to that. Just feeling angry, just watching the news and just feeling, I don't know, disgusted, furious, sad, whatever. It's never good. I feel like it's just yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as far as the algorithm, as far as Facebook is concerned, I think that a lot of us have had that process of deleting people that made you mad on Facebook or unfollowing whatever, to the point where kind of you know purging our friends list until we just have these people that only agree with us and only validate us. At least I think I've done that. I think I'm guilty of that.
Well, I'm equally as guilty. So after Trump was declared the winner in the 2016 election, I had a bunch of friends on Facebook say, if you didn't vote for Hillary, you can go ahead and unfriend me now because I don't want anything to do with you. And I said,
Right.
okay, unfriend, 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 unfriend. I probably
Yeah.
got rid of 2 dozen contacts. And these are people that I like. Like
Yeah.
I actually like spending time with them.
Right.
But it was just one of those things where, they were so angry. And listen, all of us get this way. So it's not,
Right.
I'm not going to make any kind of character judgments. And I should have, I'm still young, but I was younger then and I didn't have the insight. Like, just let them burn off steam and then they can be
Right.
your friend again and everyone will have good feelings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a regret of mine.
It's tough though, because I think that it's just sort of a bad form of communication. I think in a lot of ways. I remember speaking of the 2016 election, I was volunteering for the Sanders campaign in the primaries, and one thing that they had us do was go around, you know, calling people on the phone, trying to get them to come out to vote, and then also knocking on doors. And I noticed something very interesting, which is that when you knock on someone's door, they are 100% nicer to you than when you call them on the phone. We call people on the phone and be like, hey, are you interested in voting in the Democratic primary? And they would just, hurl a bunch of F-bombs at us and tell us, I want to speak to your manager. I never want to be called again.
Take me off your list.
Take me off your list. They just freak out, just rail into you like half the time. And then we went and knocked on people's doors. And our boss said, knock on independents, knock on Republicans. We're like, okay, fine. They didn't want to hear anything we had to say, but extremely polite. Oh, no, thank you, sir. That's it. Nobody said one thing, to our faces. I think that's interesting. I mean, maybe maybe it's not so genuine, but maybe we shouldn't be, that genuine. Just tell people everything, every horrible feeling that you have instantaneously. I don't know.
All right, so we both agree that there is this problem that exists in our discourse now and everyone treating each other so badly. What do you think people on the right side of the spectrum have done to make things worse?
I think in some ways the same things that we all do, just sort of not viewing the other person as a person, kind of demonization of the other. I think that goes both ways. Not to say whatever, I think everybody does everything to the same degree or whatever, but I do think that a lot of these things are trends. They have to do with the world that we're living in and, the environments that we're communicating in. And I think that they go for everybody. I think we can all kind of look at this. As far as something specific on the right, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. What do you think? Do you think that there's something that is specific to the right that you think is making things worse?
We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's something that I'll share now, but it's this relationship between pride and arrogance,
Yeah.
right? They're related, they're so similar to one another, but there are some key differences where I would say, I mean, I guess answering questions about both the right and the left right now,
Yeah.
I would say that the right or people on the right tend to be more proud than arrogant. They've done things a certain way, their life works, they're content. I don't want you to tell me what to do.
Right.
You're not better than me. That kind of a mindset. Where people on the left, I find, tend to be a little bit more arrogant, where they feel that they know best, that they are morally superior to others.
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel in those kinds of interactions. And so I feel that's a recipe for disaster when one side is arrogant and one side is proud. You have the
Sure.
one side saying, "I know everything. We need to do things my way. It's the only morally righteous way to do things. And if you disagree, then you're a bad person." Oh yeah?
Right.
You calling me a bad person? How dare you? You know what?
Right.
I'm going to oppose everything you do and say strictly out of spite. Even
Yeah.
if you're right, I'm going to spite you because the way that I have been doing things has worked for me just fine, thank you. And so
Yeah.
I feel I answer both questions, but I feel like that's what the right does is they take everything personally, and
Sure.
I feel like, I mean, maybe you feel this way too about your people, but for
My
my,
people. Oh, they're my people
yeah,
now.
yeah. What do you mean, you people? No, but for my people, I feel that there is this deep sense of paranoia. You know, we
Yeah.
feel that everyone is out to get us and that everyone's trying to make us look bad and stupid. And we act accordingly and we dig in our heels and we try to fight these demons even if there are none.
That's really interesting. Michael told me about this assessment a few weeks ago. I think that there really is something there, where the left can be extremely arrogant. I would say, even as somebody on the left, I think it's absolutely true. It's kind of like we have scientifically proven that our way is better than yours. Your ways belong to the benighted past. You're all a bunch of peasant hillbillies. I mean, no one. I think no one on the left can deny that they know what we're talking about here. No one's like, "What do you mean?" Like, of course. And as far as this dichotomy or this I don't know juxtaposition of haughty, superior arrogance to stubborn, you know, pride, stubborn pride. Yeah, I think there is something to that, and I think that it's been said a lot, but I think that if there's one thing that I would criticize about the left, it would be this kind of moral puritanism that I think people, that, I think their hearts are in the right place. I think they're trying to do good. They don't think that they're doing something, sinister in any way. But I think that people want to be so good that they end up being a little bit scary. It's like we everything has to be exactly morally correct or else. And I don't have any impurities whatsoever. I mean, I guess people could do this from any ideological point of view, just be a total purist. But I think that it happens a lot on the left because of that. It's like we've got this intellectual superiority complex, and we're trying to find the perfect society, the perfect ideology, and you get the cancel culture, the deplatforming kind of things. And on some levels, I maybe roll my eyes a little bit when I hear people talk about political correctness sometimes. Like, oh, the problem with the world is political correctness. Maybe it's one problem. But at the same time, maybe there is something to that. Is that there's something a little bit, at the very least, off-putting to people. Maybe counterproductive about that whole enterprise. Not that we should say, oh, it doesn't matter, what you say about people. Words don't matter. That's not it. But yeah, I'm rambling. But yeah,
Oh, I think I get what you're saying, though. So, I guess next question would be, so we have these disagreements, and the political climate of today is where it is. There's some issues where the right probably feels that they're winning. There are some
yeah,
areas where the left feels that they're winning. My question for you is, how can we have conversations? I mean, we were talking about paranoia and, putting our guards up and feeling like our way is the only morally correct or adequate way to go about doing things. But is there a way for us to talk with one another, do you think, and to give concessions to one another even without feeling like we're giving up our political power? I don't know if that makes sense.
right. Our core values without compromising. Yeah,
Like, to give you an example, so let's use climate change as an example, right? So, science for a long time, and there are some who would dispute the science, but the science has been fairly clear for a long time. The climate is changing. The climate is changing in a way which, if it continues along these trends, is going to have fairly significant impact on the way the world works.
yeah,
And mankind is the greatest contributor to that climate change because of our behaviors, our pollution, whatever it is. The science has been saying this a long time. The right, or excuse me, the left was saying this is the case, so these are the things that we need to do. We need to implement all of these regulations. We need to restrict fossil fuels. We need to subsidize and promote, solar and wind power and all these other clean energies. And we need to do it now. And the right digs in,
yeah,
right? And in a lot of cases, the right has dug in to the point where, I mean, we call it climate change deniers or science deniers. And
yeah.
where I would say, even if that's true, they're probably not doing it because of the science. They're doing it because of the implications of the science.
Sure.
But I feel like a lot of people on the right are coming around to this idea that, yeah, this is probably something that we should do something about. How could somebody on the right give in and not have this turned into one of those, oh, well, see, we were right again, you were wrong again, therefore we're going to use this the next time we have another dispute where we disagree, and we're going to say, well, remember last time you were wrong? Yeah, you're
Yeah.
wrong this time.
It reminds me a little bit of like couples arguing or something. This sort of extending to the other person the benefit of the doubt. Just being willing to say, okay, I trust that you're doing your best, you're acting in good faith. I think that's missing now. I think what you're pointing at is absolutely true because, yeah, if the Republicans came around and said global warming is real and we need to do something about it, the Democrats would say, oh, finally, you idiots figured it out, right? I mean, it's not like they'd be like, oh, great.
Now we can work together.
Now we can work together. No, it's like, well, guess what? You're too little too late. And the climate plan that you put forward is basically the one we put forward 15 years ago. And, whatever. Yeah.
But now it's not going to work.
No, it's not going to work. Because there's this general atmosphere of sort of, bad faith. It's just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to let you live this down. We're enemies. And we're not willing to de-escalate, take things down a notch, because we're all convinced of the righteousness of our cause.
Yeah. So I guess what are our takeaways here? So number one, we need to respect one another a little bit more. We need to treat each other like we're in the room as opposed to fighting each other anonymously through keyboard
Yeah,
warfare. Number two would be seek to understand bef-
absolutely.
before you, before you try to convince somebody that their opinion is wrong, or
Yeah.
you try to persuade somebody of the righteousness of your cause, you need to actually not only try to understand, but you have to ensure that the other person feels like you understand them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a huge part of what's missing. And if, to put that advice crudely to myself in, 2015, you know, rattling off on people on the internet, I think I just say, sometimes we need to shut up. I think we're just out here saying all this stuff, stirring the pot. And we got to ask, who's this helping? What are we doing? Who are we doing this for? If we're trying to make some kind of, you know, show off how right we are, is it really going to help? Is it really changing anything, or are we just doing this to prove to ourselves that, I don't know, that we're so correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so once we decide, what, we're going to respect one another, we're going to be respectful to others, even if they attack us, even if they're trying to instigate something. I'm not going to take the bait. I'm going to try to understand them to the point where they know I care about them. And then
Yeah.
when we have conversations, we give each other that benefit of the doubt, just like you said. If somebody gives us an inch, we don't try to take a mile. We just take the inch
Yeah.
and say thank you. You know,
Yeah.
when this is all said and done, after episode who knows how many, I guess it depends on how many people listen, other than our moms. But it may determine how long we do this. But after episode 50, and you're a conservative, it will be a death by 1,000 cuts and not by one gaping gash. That I deliver in week 3.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. We talked earlier about Daryl Davis.
Oh yeah,
He's the black jazz musician who made friends with, I think, the Grand Wizard of the KKK. In order to in an attempt to gain understanding, and we both thought that was a really interesting story. Eventually, the Grand Wizard ended up, taking off the robe, kind of giving up. The cognitive dissonance was too much. But I think that what I got from that was, I think this advice, I think, would especially go for the left, is that just because you think that somebody is wrong, and you think that they're wrong in ways that are hurtful, that they're immoral in some way, I think that you can't then just dehumanize them and be like, okay, well, they're a monster, we have nothing to talk about, because I feel like that's just a path to war, honestly, when you just have no more solutions. I think when the stakes are high, when the differences matter, I think that's when we have to have dialogue, when we have to have understanding, when possible.
yeah. Well, I mean, and if you think about it, there aren't many stakes that are higher than being a black guy alone in a room with the Grand Wizard or the Grand Dragon of the KKK.
Yeah,
But
it's an incredible
you're
story.
you're
Yeah.
you're alone with him, and I think the first meeting that they had was he had him
Bodyguard,
and his
yeah.
bodyguard. You can't have much higher stakes than that. And if
No.
in that kind of a circumstance you can treat one another with dignity, why can't we, as just regular citizens who, I mean, frankly, our hatred for one another is not nearly as strong as the disdain that members of the KKK have for people of different races or religious
Sure.
creeds, right?
Yeah.
And so if they can become friends, and I don't remember the KKK member's name from his story,
Yeah.
but if Daryl Davis and this guy can become friends and respect one another over years and eventually have the robes turned in, why can't we treat each other kindly?
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess invitation for all of you is treat each other respectfully, try to understand one another, strive to be like Daryl Davis and others like him who are able to understand and respect and frankly have love for one another in a
Yeah.
way that someone who may hate you has those walls come down, they're willing to be vulnerable, and then hopefully not only dialogue happens, but the change that we all want to see.
Right. With that said, maybe I thought maybe to set up a little bit of the show that we're going to be doing. Our idea is to discuss different topics, hot button things, controversial things that tend to draw a line between people. And our conversations are not going to take the form of a debate so much. So maybe it's not so much what you're used to listening to. We're not trying to win as much as we're just trying to gain an understanding of, what do we feel about these issues? Why do we feel this way? And, maybe by extension, why do other people feel this way?
Yeah. I mean, facts don't care about your feelings, but we do. We do. No,
I had one more question. I thought, how would you characterize yourself politically, just for the listeners? A little brief introduction. What are your politics?
yeah. I think that's good. I I would characterize myself as being fiscally conservative, fairly conservative socially, with a strong leaning towards being a libertarian. And
Yeah,
then, I mean, here's the other thing too, though. It's so difficult for me, and I think anyone, to really say where exactly they lie in the
sure.
political spectrum, because frankly, there are issues where I might take a firm stance, but the importance of the issue is just, I don't care, right? And
Yeah,
then there are other issues where I care about them greatly, and I know where I am, and those ones tend to be more conservative. So um, things like gun ownership,
yeah,
or immigration, or um, tax policy, those types of things, I do care about a little bit more, for various reasons, but I am definitely on the right with those ones. Right? What about you?
yeah. I'd say that I'm quite left. Uh, I probably characterize myself as center left, social democrat, that kind of thing. Yeah, and it is complicated. It seemed like a simple question I was asking, but then when you're asking me, I'm like, where do I start? And, maybe there's a danger in a way of putting people in boxes and trying to be too much. Oh, okay, there's only two kinds of people, two kinds of opinions. Obviously, we differ in various ways, but yeah, I'm solidly left in the United States. Probably you'd say I was center left in a global perspective.
Okay, fair enough. Any last words for our mothers and maybe some cousins or former coworkers?
That's a stretch. Yeah,
Maybe Mrs. J, although she's not on Facebook anymore, so she may not
what
even listen
happened?
to this.
Yeah,
Oh no.
maybe she unfriended us.
No, I saw her. I saw her make an announcement a few weeks back, and she said Facebook no longer provides me with or it no longer fulfills a need that I had, and there are other things that I can do to fill that same need. And I was like, no, one of the only listeners that we might have had other than our parents.
All gone, like the snows of yesteryear. All right. As far as last words, I don't know. Take it easy, I guess.
Yeah, good speaking with you as always. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.